them to actually give advice to farmers when making those payments. So I would like to see that culture change completely, because I think it is necessary.
Would the honourable gentleman give
I certainly will.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. Would he agree on the question of these rural payments that a lot of the changes that are needed aren't just cultural, but they're actual they're ministerial. They don't require extra changes in the legislation from what is already provided, and so it gives an opportunity for the Minister, the Department and indeed members of this House to get things right now over the coming months, because I've got many constituents, as I'm sure he does, who complain about the system very much.
My honourable friend raises a really good point, and I think earlier on, if I again interpret what the Minister said in the correct way, is that he will have that much more flexibility now to be able to look at the individual case and have some discretion. But like I said, I think I'd like to see that written in blood before I'm absolutely certain that it's going to happen, because we have had so many problems over the years, and he will know, not only in his constituency but across the country, we have had these problems. And I think, it's not from the want of the Minister trying to actually get it sorted, so I believe he will, but I think it's something that we need to be very much aware. I also welcome his laying out in the bill that the entitlements for claims and all of these things will be covered from not only from this bill but into the new system, because entitlements for making claims over the years again have always been a major problem, and there's been many people, as the systems have changed, have actually fell out of the various systems of being able to make a claim and then have had to appeal it. Some have been allowed, some have not, and there has been some real hardship in some cases, and so I think this is quite important as we move forward. And one honourable member on our side also made the point on small holdings. It'll be interesting to see what do we do in the future, because at the moment we exclude any payment under 5 hectares. Now, if that's an area of payment, I can see some logic to that because of the number of claims. But if we're going to move into a more environmental system, then should not perhaps some of these small holders also be entitled to payment? But this is very much, I accept, Madam Chairman, for the next agricultural bill. But I think what this bill does allow is for continuation of payment and actually hopefully some flexibility. Now, the Bow report, the recommended changes the way in which the UK CAP funds are distributed among the UK nations, following the review that the government increased the amount of direct payments for Scotland and Wales. And I very much welcome the money going to Scotland and Wales, but as an English farmer and representing an English seat, naturally I want to make sure that that goes as extra money and not at the expense of those payments coming to English farmers and Northern Irish farmers, and I think I've had the assurance from the Minister that that is the case.
Would my honourable friend give way?
I certainly will.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I wonder if he would agree with me that my farmers in Brecon and Radnorshire are at somewhat of a disadvantage, in that the Welsh Government wants to phase out direct payments much faster than the UK Government. So my farmers who sit on the border between England and Wales will be looking over the hedge at neighbours who enjoy an awful lot more support from their government than they do.
Yeah. I very much welcome the new honourable member to her seat here, and it's great to have her here representing Brecon and Radnorshire. And she makes a very interesting point, because, like I said, I actually believe that perhaps we are almost going ourselves too fast in transferring from one payment to another, because of the history of not always actually getting it correct in the first place, and so therefore I would actually take a bit more time. So the idea that the Welsh Government is actually going faster, I think is the wrong way to go, because you've got to actually make sure that the environmental schemes are up and running, that they are delivering from the environment, but they're also delivering cash into the pockets of farmers. And I will just a moment, and I've made this point last week when I said that in the second reading, is that it's some farmers, I think, believe that they can replace all the money that comes from the basic farm payment with the new environmental schemes. And they may or may not, perhaps some on permanent pasture ground in upland and grassland maybe, others may not be. And I think, you know, in Wales that'll be piling on the agony if they're not at all careful. I will give way.
Well, I'm very grateful. I obviously congratulate him on his re-election success. But on that point, I very much agree with him that we do need a lengthy transition and a stable period as we move to the new system, because surely the important thing is investment from farmers, because we ultimately need higher productivity. But in order to get to that, they need to have stability in the interim to plan that investment with security about the outcome until the new system is in place.
I welcome the comment from my honourable friend, because he is absolutely right. Because the problem I see in the future, not only with this particular bill, but with the future bill, is that we talk much about, quite rightly, about enhancing the environment. But we also talk about the productivity and the profitability of agriculture. And I think we've got to make sure that the two actually knit together. I'm not absolutely convinced that they do at the moment, and I'm sure the Minister and Government will persuade us otherwise. But I absolutely accept what he says, because I think, you know, the farming, farmers will not want to, and in fact, you know, it's not the way forward for them to earn all of their income from environmental payments, and so therefore they need to earn an income from what they produce. And I think that is the important bit, is how do we have a productive agriculture and a more environmentally based agriculture, and how can we incorporate the two. And I'm sure we can, and I know the Minister has many ideas, but like I said, I look forward to that. So I just really wanted to talk also a little bit about in this bill, we've also got, you know, the rural development money that also goes, the RDPE money that goes perhaps sometimes to rural areas, may sometimes go into village halls and all sorts of wider aspects. So I take it that this bill will also cover those sort of payments for the forthcoming year, because I know in my part, in the Blackdown Hills and others, this is very important. I also the UK government, also the point that when I raised the question while the Minister was speaking on this issue of our payments to the EU. I don't think I got a complete answer on this one, because while the Minister assured us that we will not be making a double payment, i.e. the payment that we pay to our farmers then won't be also paid to the EU. But the question I asked, and he may be able to actually deal with this in his summing up, is that at the moment we pay more into the Common Agricultural Policy than we receive from it. So therefore, in some degrees, we subsidise agriculture across the whole of the EU. So surely, as we leave this year, we will not be making that payment to them, and so therefore we should be saving money. But I don't know whether we've got the detail of that yet, but I think it is absolutely essential that we do actually make that saving. Like I said, I think again, like I said, going back to Wales and Scotland, I very much welcome the extra money. Like I said, I am very much looking forward to the second reading of the agricultural bill next week. And also, one of the things that hopefully we will be able to do when we can actually get the select committees back and actually running is actually look at real detail about how these new schemes are actually going to work on the ground, how are they going to actually deliver a better environment, better biodiversity, but also allow production and good quality, high animal welfare production, which we very much enjoy in this country across the whole of our 4 nations. And I think that is absolutely essential. And like I said, we've also got to make sure that we, as we roll out the new system, that we take some of the parts, and I think, you know, perhaps one or two of my honourable friends friends on this side of the House might throw up their hands in horror at this last statement, but there are some parts to the basic farm payment scheme and some of the parts of the common agricultural policy that have actually worked reasonably well. And so therefore, let's not actually just throw all the babies out with the bathwater. Then let's actually make sure that we take those aspects of what's good about the present system and then enshrine them in the new system, but also make it much more adaptable, much lighter on its feet, change the culture of the Rural Payments Agency and DEFRA, and also, like I said, I think we have good ministers and Secretary of State that will be able to interpret and help farmers actually into this new world, so that in the end we can actually deliver both a better environment, better food production, actually produce more food in this country, not less, and look forward to a bright future. I very much welcome this bill. Thank you.
Deirdre Brock. Madam Chair. Look, at the risk of repeating myself, I am going to repeat myself, I'm afraid. This bill is only needed as a result of the descent of the Tory party into a Brexit fetish. Now, having to craft emergency legislation to do what was normal and routine until now seems almost a metaphor for the chaos to come. Here we are compensating for a government that failed to plan and seems surprised that the logical consequences of Brexit are coming to pass. Like those Brexit supporters who've been surprised to discover that the loss of freedom of movement will apply, in fact, to them too. Yep. The government seems ill-prepared for a future outside the EU. This bill needs to go through to paper over some of the cracks and allow the business of farming and crofting to go on. No one will be opposing it, and so I will not take up much time in speaking about it. And nor will I do what other members did in the earlier stages and haver on about matters unconnected to the bill. I won't, for example, be talking about how crofters and farmers will be facing massive uncertainty at the autumn markets if there are tariff barriers and trade hurdles with the EU. Nor will I be laying out the succession of broken promises from one UK government after another. I won't be pointing out the problems that agricultural businesses will face in importing fertiliser, animal feed, herbicides, pesticides, machinery and so on. Let all those other things wait their turn in the debates on the maelstrom of Brexit consequences. I may, though, mention the purloined convergence cash from time to time and demand that its return does not simply become a bit of public relations. It should be returned with humility rather than a fanfare. We can hope, I suppose. I do wonder, though, whether ministers have had a chance to consider the questions they were asked and failed to answer last week. Perhaps the minister could have a wee listen, because I'd be very keen to hear his answers. Questions that came from members representing a range of parties and a very wide geographical spread. The Minister of State suggested last week that the issue of possible currency fluctuations had been considered, but he didn't offer an answer to the question posed by the member for Caithness, Sutherland and Easter Ross. Will any drop in the value of sterling see a corresponding uplift in farm payments to take account of the increased costs of the imported products that farmers need? In answer to the member for Carmarthen East and Dinever, asking whether there should be a multi-annual, or whether there would be a multi-annual framework, the Secretary of State said that the details hadn't been worked out yet. Now, surely the basic framework of the scheme is more than the detail. When are we likely to hear details of that? The Secretary of State also said that she had yet to decide on basic payments, and this has been raised by others today. The kind of information that farmers are likely to be desperate to get in order to plan their businesses. When will we see the details or even the outline of them? And more importantly, when will farmers be getting news about how much they are likely to get, or some way to work it out? She also said that the division of monies was yet to be decided, so when will we hear details about the settlement that the devolved administrations will have? While I'm on that subject, Madam Chair, let me get back to the convergence funding, because it is important. That convergence funding was payable to Scotland to even out farm payments, taking the extent of Scotland's less favoured areas into account. Last week, however, the Minister said there will be an uplift in funding for Scotland and Wales to reflect their severely disadvantaged area status, and that the uplift for Scotland and Wales will be paid for with new funds. There will therefore be no loss to the BPS payments for English or Northern Ireland farmers. So that means that there is no levelling of payment, that Scottish farmers are being shortchanged again, and that severe comparative disadvantage that severe comparative disadvantage the Minister referred to remains. So can the Minister give assurances that there will be additional funding coming to Scotland and, of course, going to Wales to address that imbalance? That is, after all, what the convergence funding was supposed to do. We also have the unsettled issue of long-term guarantees. Will Scotland's farmers be able to rely on the cash going to Scotland from the Treasury? Yep. Will the funding keep pace with the inflationary costs that farmers and crofters will be facing? And it really concerned me to hear the Minister's language earlier on future support as the English system moves away from providing support for food producers. Will the funding available for Scotland's food producers be maintained in real terms? Now, it seems clear to me that the proposed scheme for England will be storing up some serious long-term problems in food production without actually delivering on the public goods that the environmental campaigners hope for. Now, that will become clearer as modifications to those public goods are made under Section 50 of the new Agriculture Bill. But the ability to provide subsidies for grass moors and monoculture forests is already written into the first section of that bill. Now, those will be matters for English politicians and campaigners to debate in the main. As the Shadow Secretary of State said last week, farmers will be asking how it affects them. My concern, though, is for the effect that this may have on Scotland and Scottish food production. So, what guarantees can the Ministers offer us today about the security of the future funding of Scottish farms, crofts and food production? This bill will not be opposed, but equally those questions will not go away.
Here.
Simon Hall.
Thank you very much, Dame Eleanor, and I welcome this bill, I think, for a number of reasons. First of all, I think it does provide us all with an opportunity in this increasingly urbanised media and world to remind ourselves of the importance that farming plays, crucially, with regards to food security, but also, as other members have alluded to, landscape management, which clearly assists our tourism sector, water quality, which clearly includes tourism on our coastal areas as well. So the role that agriculture plays is pivotal. Part of the problem is that a lot of people only glean their knowledge or experience of farming and the agricultural sector from Countryfile and the Archers, which provides a slightly narrow picture of what it is like. And I'm sure that they are both great programmes, Dame Eleanor. They are staple listening and viewing in the Hall House. And indeed where I live as well. Sorry, I just couldn't resist it. But there are too many people who think that farmers are loaded and this is just a bung to already wealthy people. And those of us who know farmers, who represent farmers, who talk to farmers in our constituencies, know that that is very, very far from the truth. It is important that we provide, in times of uncertainty, as we transition from a 40-year membership of the EU to striking out on our own, that we provide certainty where we can. And I reference in an intervention to the Minister. Arable, of course, needs certainty, but those where there are greater fluctuations, either in in consumer trend, price fluctuation, weather, or disease. The lamb sector, the beef sector, the dairy sector are the mainstays of the Blackmore Vales agricultural focus, whilst the Cranbourne Chase in the east of my constituency, it's more chalkland, and therefore it is predominantly, though not exclusively, arable. Yes, chalkland, just like the constituency of Cheltenham. Thank you to my good friend for that Secretary Heckle. Certainty is important because we are dealing here with long-term planning. Do farmers have the confidence to ask lenders for money to buy that new piece of farm equipment? Do they have the confidence or certainty to plant that crop, like some of my farmers in North Dorset, who now are growing milling grains for the German beer sector, who are growing white poppies, the stalks of which are exported to Hungary for medical purposes, to extract medical opium to provide painkillers. If you are going to put your herd or your flock into a growth spurt, if you are going to want to see them calve and lamb, you want to have certainty that there is some basic underpinning to your sector, and this is what this bill does, and that is, Dame Eleanor, why it is to be supported. I also think it's important, we will hear this echoed, I'm certain, in the debates around the agriculture bill. I think this bill and the agriculture bill are effectively two sides of the same coin, but the huge scope for agri-tech, again, that needs certainty. There are productivity benefits, there are environmental benefits to it, and we must make sure that that sector, growing and really taking root in the UK, has the confidence to continue. One final point, if I may, which is with regards to audit, and various members have probed the Minister about the performance of the RPA and how it's going to look. They're effectively, some of them will be suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. They need to be freed from that. They need to be able to think with a lighter touch. But in that audit trail, it's taking the point of my honourable friend from the chairman of the Select Committee, who I congratulate on his re-election. We mustn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. The British taxpayer must be certain that those payments being made to farmers are fair, are needed, are transparent. So let us make sure that there is a clear audit trail on this homegrown UK system, so that British farmers have confidence and certainty, but the British taxpayer also has certainty that their money is being put to good purpose to support and to encourage that vital mainstay of the British economy, namely agriculture.
Yeah.
Jim Shannon.
Madam Deputy Speaker. First of all, can I say it's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Gentleman for North Dorset, and can I also offer my congratulations to the Honourable Member for Tiverton and Honiton and his re-election back as Chair. He brings a wealth of experience to that position, and we wish him well in the position that he holds. I'm very pleased to speak on the direct payments and the commitment that the Minister has given. I'm pleased to see the Minister in his place as always. He understands agriculture as he understood fishing very well, and he has responsibility for that as well. And we look forward to his cooperation with the Northern Ireland Assembly, in particular with the Minister for Dara, Edmund Putz, who is also my party colleague. The agri-food sector in my constituency is vitally important to the economy of Northern Ireland, but in particular to my constituency. Whether it be milk, beef, sheep, lambs or poultry or arable crops, whatever it may be, the importance is very important. The sustainability that the Minister referred to early on is critical to enable the agricultural sector to maintain the high food standards that they do, but also to gain through their partnership with the manufacturing companies. Because whenever the farmers, happy to give way, yes.
Well, friend, very much for giving way, and I'm sure he would agree with me that I think the thing about Northern Ireland is that family farms are a structure for the whole of the United Kingdom, but nowhere more than in Northern Ireland. And so I think the importance of this bill and the future of agriculture is so critical to Northern Ireland.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention. I agree wholeheartedly, and I will explain that maybe very, very shortly in my contribution. The farmers do well, the companies who work through them, the partnerships that are established, the Lakeland Dairies who employ some 260 people and then produce the and manufacture the milk and the powder and export it across the world, whether it be Rich Sauces, whether it be Willowbrook Foods, whether it be Mash Direct. There's 4 of the companies in Northern Ireland that work in partnership with the farmers, but ensure that the farmers with the direct payments can enable them to produce the good products to go to sell across the world. We in my constituency in Mid-Down have the number 2 milk production in the whole of Northern Ireland. So my neighbours, and I declare an interest, Madam Deputy Speaker, as a member of the Ulster Farmers Union, but also as a farmer, and I understand the importance of my neighbours have for the milk in the sector. I did receive some correspondence from the Ulster Farmers Union, who are the sister organisation of the National Farmers Union, and I just want to make some comment, if I could, to that. In relation to the Her Majesty's Treasurer announcement on farm funding for 2020, I welcome the news as it delivers commitment made by the Conservative Party and by the Minister in particular. It is essential that Northern Ireland's share of the UK farm funding is maintained. It is my understanding that Her Majesty's Treasury has confirmed with DAERA, the Agriculture Department at the Northern Ireland Assembly, that the monies will be rolled over from 2019 to 2020. And we're also hoping that DAERA would be able to pay the 100% of those payments by mid-October. I'm just wondering whether the Minister has had an opportunity to discuss directly with the new Minister in Northern Ireland on these nitty-gritty ones, but they understand how we're getting the things through in the process that we wish to do. Getting a new Northern Ireland agriculture policy up and running by 2021 will be very ambitious. However, I do hope that government are up to the challenge. Last week, the Ulster Farmers Union Beef and Lamb Policy Committee met to discuss the priorities for the new Northern Ireland Agriculture Minister. The Ulster Farmers Union Hill Farming Policy Committee will meet this week to look at their key priorities. And again, I say these things, Minister, because it's really important that what's happening in Northern Ireland is mirrored by what's happening here and working together. I would assume that one key priority will be for the re-established ANC scheme, especially now that the flattening of payments is frozen at 5/7 of the commitment. Beef and lamb key priorities for support. Again, I put these on record and answer it because they're important to the farmers back home. As the Honourable Member for Tiverton and Honiton refers, we have small farmers who depend on the direct payment scheme to enable them to deliver profitability in their farms. Beef and lamb key priorities for support. Immediate new targeted suckler cow payments to stabilise the number. Immediate examination. The impact of the €100 million beef exceptional aid measure scheme that Irish beef farmers received in DAERA must consider emergency support for Northern Ireland beef producers. The safety net for the volatility mitigation support. Ulster Farmers Union would request that a deficiency slaughter premium scheme be established for the Northern Ireland beef sector. I've drafted this, has already been established with our presented to DAERA, and I'm just very keen to know if the Minister's had the chance to look at those things yet. It will provide a safety net for the farm businesses and the rural economy, and we need the Minister to be involved with the Northern Ireland Assembly Minister for that purpose. Immediate new targeting for the breeding new payment. Similar rollover to the scheme that's in the Republic of Ireland. Provide targeted support which will contribute positively to sheep welfare. An immediate reinstatement of the DAERA funding of the Grass Check 2020, beef from grass and lamb from grass. The Northern Ireland Agriculture Minister has committed himself to doing all in his power, but we do need the Minister's commitment, and I'm very pleased to see him in point 3, part 2 of the document that we have before us, that DAERA, if the regulations relate to that body or our laws applies in regards to Northern Ireland, very clearly, the Minister and this government have given a full commitment to working along with the Northern Ireland Assembly to ensure that these things do happen. The Ulster Farmers Union have concerns that we in the Northern Ireland farming sector will fall under some other controls from the EU, and again, Minister, would just like some assurance that that will not be the case. And we want to be treated the same in every way as the rest of the United Kingdom. Close cooperation between the Minister and the Minister at Westminster and the Northern Ireland Assembly is vital. Can I make some comment, Minister, and I conclude with this, Madam Deputy Chair, is in relation to the environmental schemes. The environmental schemes enable the government's target of carbon net zero by 2045 to be achieved. Those schemes are critical for that. The tree planting, for instance, that will become the lungs of the world. The then worry grouse project, for instance, it's one of those schemes that's sponsored through this direct payments. But that scheme enables the environment to grow and sustain itself and be there for the future. So I very much like the welcome what the Minister has said. Look forward to working cooperatively with him, and do beseech him particularly to ensure that when it comes to working alongside the Northern Ireland Assembly and the Minister, that it's critical that it happens. If it happens, then we all gain.
Dave Duggan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I've enjoyed very much the observations from around these islands in the course of this debate, and I'd like to reflect on the answer the Minister gave to me and perhaps maybe offer him an opportunity to expand a little bit on that answer in his summing up in terms of my inquiry about how ministers of the UK Government would interact with the agricultural sector, its representative bodies in the NFU and the NFUS, and ministers in the various devolved administrations about how we take forward the next cycle of development of a post-CAP, post-EU agricultural framework for the United Kingdom, because whilst the devolved administrations have substantive authority and control over many of these issues, devolved administrations are necessarily subsidiary to the UK, and whilst I wish that that perhaps weren't the case, in fact I definitely wish that that wasn't the case, insofar as it remains the case, it is incumbent in my view for ministers to take a cooperative and collegiate approach to setting objectives about how we deliver the very best for our agricultural sectors going forward. And I'd like to hear how the Government intend to do that. We heard in response to a question from the Minister's honourable friend, the member for North West Durham, about the phasing of the changes as we evolve post-Common Agricultural Policy and how those how that phasing would be undertaken. And that's a key element of exactly how we need to understand from farmers, from their representative bodies, what they wish to see. As the chair of the Select Committee pointed out, there are elements within CAP that are worth keeping. I'm sorry to have him return to his place. There are elements within that that are worth keeping, and the Minister would do well to make sure he liaises with people on the front line of agriculture about what those elements are. And we must certainly have a recognition that insofar as this bill bridges a gap, it doesn't contain the opportunity for meaningful transition of long-term planning. And we've heard many colleagues across the House talk about the need for investment in capital equipment and machinery, for changes in that which they're producing on their farms. And it's really important that we have some kind of indication or signposting about how we can transfer and evolve this post-CAP scenario into something that will really deliver meaningful material change for agriculture. Thank you.
Does the Minister wish to give a very brief reply? Minister.
Thank you very much, Dame Elaine. I just wish to address some of the points raised by honourable members, including the Shadow Minister, who'd obviously tabled some amendments in this area. First of all, on the claim that this had been rushed, the reason that we need this legislation through now is that we cannot allow an air gap to open up in the application of these regulations. We leave the EU at the end of January. Members will be aware from what I said earlier that the scheme year is already open. Farmers are already making decisions about cropping, about how much land they must leave fallow. Many of these deadlines are already upon us. The scheme window opens in March, so we must have this in place to ensure that the schemes can be implemented. Which brings me to my main point regarding the amendments 8 and 9 that he tabled to Schedule 2 to remove the made affirmative procedure. We must have these regulations made by exit day so that there is not an air gap. If we waited for the affirmative procedure, we would not have these regulations necessary in place in time. We would not have operable law in place. That is why the made affirmative procedure is the appropriate one for Clause 3, subsection 1 and Clause 3, subsection 3. He also suggested that we needed a provision to extend this particular bill. We don't need that provision because the agriculture bill will be the one that replaces this current one. Finally, as far as late penalties, compensation penalties, the simple fact is that we need to simplify this scheme in order to ensure people that are paid on time not have lots of complex remapping, and that is what we are intending to achieve through this.
Thank you. The question is that Clause 1 stand part of the bill. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. With the leave of the House, I intend to put the questions on clauses 2 to 9 and schedules 1 and 2 together. So the question is that clauses 2 to 9 and schedules 1 and 2 stand part of the bill. As many as that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order. Order. Order.
I beg to report that the committee has gone through the bill and directed me to report the same without amendment.
Thank you. Third reading?
Now.
Minister to move third reading, Mr. George Eustace.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I beg to move that the bill be now read a third time. I'd like to thank the House for the debate that we've had on this bill, which is so vital for the agricultural sector across the UK. And I want to recognise the frustrations that some members might have had because of the need for this bill in the first place, given that there is obviously an agriculture bill also on its way. First of all, I'd like to reaffirm that the bill makes no policy changes. This bill is about continuity. It is a small technical bill to ensure that the government and devolved administrations are able to pay direct payments to farmers for the 2020 scheme year. Our future intentions for agriculture in England have been laid out by the government in our agriculture bill, which was introduced on the 16th of January. We know farmers need stability, certainty and a smooth transition to our new system of public money for public goods, so we will not switch off direct payments overnight. This would be irresponsible, and there shall be a 7-year agricultural transition period allowing a system of public money for public goods to be gradually introduced. I acknowledge that this bill is being passed under a tight timescale. However, it is imperative that it and the necessary secondary legislation are in place and in force by exit day, which will be upon us at the end of this week. The withdrawal agreement will stop the cap direct payments legislation from applying in the UK for the 2020 scheme year, and this was intended so that the UK would not have to pay into the EU's next budget cycle, which funds the 2020 direct payments year. I will do.
I'm going to try again once more on this issue that we are paying for. We won't be paying into the Common Agricultural Policy for our part of the money that comes back to us, but will we be actually paying the amount we paid before, which was actually contributing for the CAP across the rest of the European Union?
Well, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to make that address that point raised by my honourable friend in previous stages of this bill. But it is the case that we will not be contributing to the next multi-annual financial framework. We will not contribute to the 2021 budget. And therefore, not only will we not be contributing and getting back money for our farmers, we will pay that ourselves, we will not be paying in this scheme year for EU farmers, since we won't be contributing to that part of the budget. In summary, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased that this bill is making its passage so that we can ensure that our farmers in each and every part of the UK have the certainty they need as we leave the CAP and embark on our new ambitious programme. This bill has received legislative consent motions from every part of the UK, including Northern Ireland, even though that they have only just recently formed a new administration. I concur with the points made by my honourable friend, the member for Strangford, in an earlier stage of this bill.
The question is that the bill be now read a third time. Luke Pollard.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And Thank the Minister for effectively repeating what he said at the Committee of the Whole House. There is cross-party support for this bill, but as my honourable friend from Cambridge said in his remarks a moment ago, that doesn't mean there aren't some issues with this bill that it's worth highlighting. As I did at the second reading, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I declare an interest that I am a very proud brother of a sheep farmer in Cornwall, in fact just up the road from the Minister's own constituency, farming in rare breed sheep, who's married to a beef farmer who is